for joining us
Hello.
for another episode of Tea and Trowels, FPAN's new web series featuring conversations with archaeologists. Today, I'm joined with Melissa Price from the Bureau of Archaeological Research. I'd like to introduce yourself and your mug.
Sure. So my name is Melissa Price. I'm a senior archaeologist and co-diving safety officer for the Florida Bureau of Archaeological Research, and that's part of the Florida Department of State, so we are a state agency. I'm also a PhD candidate and research fellow at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and I'm repping, I don't know if you can see that, Florida History Day. I was a judge in 2017, 2018, and 2019. It happens every year, and it's basically an opportunity for high schoolers to create projects that are historical in nature. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got to do the virtual judging this year since
Okay.
I'm from my home here in Sanford. So I reached out and I was like, sure, I'll help on the judging of the exhibits. So
Yeah.
and I'm cheating today, my bug, but I have a repeat, and it's just because it's really my favorite mug, and I use it daily. So it's kind of, now it's just, I'm gonna have a repeat. It's the same old scrimshaw style mug with lighthouse.
It seems less likely to tip over with that like flared base you got going on.
Right, it's perfect. So our first question right off the bat is, why did you become an archaeologist?
I originally was interested in cultural anthropology. My aunt had studied that in college, and she took me to some museums in DC, the Smithsonian, and I was just completely fascinated with her stories about her worldly travels. So I wanted to be as cool as her, and I was like, I have to be an anthropologist. So I went to James Madison University and tested out the various subdisciplines, and I actually liked archaeology a bit more. So that's how that started. I don't know if you've met or talked to Joe Hoyt yet, but he actually visited the university while I was a student there and talked about underwater archaeology. And I didn't know that was something you could do. But after that, I was convinced. I was like, yeah, I want to be diving and reporting shipwrecks. So I went into underwater.
30 seconds or less. What's your current research?
For my PhD research, I'm studying marine transgression at an archaic site. So it was originally a freshwater pond inland, and it was a mortuary pond, so people were interring their deceased in this pond. But after Holocene sea level rise, it's now located in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's on the continental shelf, and most people wouldn't think that would have survived all these years. It's dated to more than 8,000 years old. And I'm specifically looking at oysters that were growing on archaeological material, because that can tell us when the site was maybe exposed, how long it was exposed to these brackish environments. So I'll be specifically studying the oysters in that context. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm in the east central region of Florida, so our region has the Wendover site. So it's
Yes.
a mortuary pond found, but not in the same context as the now inundated salt water.
Yeah, and the Manasota Key offshore site it shares some similarities with Wendover, but again, only one currently in a continental shelf context, and nobody thought it would have been there. We had cordage, we had worked wooden stakes in a marine context, so.
Which,
yeah.
That is fantastic, and I'll be excited to hear more about it, especially to be able to use the oysters to be able to figure out when it was inundated, just not even the science of the archaeology, but also just tracking our historic sea level rise.
Exactly. Yeah,
really
just studying those site formation processes at this one specific site. But I mean, in studying the habitat of the oysters, trying to understand if the site was in a back barrier setting, and maybe that's why the crashing waves didn't cause so much damage. So, but to be determined. I just started in last December, so I have a lot of work to get done.
So kind of going in with field work, what is your favorite tool?
I did bring it, so I hope I get these bonus
You do
points.
get bonus points.
It's super simple, but I can't do my job without it. It's a compass. It's so simple. But so I have to use it not just for navigating underwater, but mapping artifacts using bearing and distance. I need it to conduct circle searches underwater. We can use it to plot units and make sure they're oriented in the correct direction, especially if they're L-shaped units, and also to make sure the units are square. So it goes with me everywhere. And I didn't have it once, and I had to use a spare, and it was like using somebody else's computer where the keyboard doesn't feel right. So yeah, it's my favorite.
So I know since you're primarily underwater research, is your compass for both land and underwater? Is there any sort of extra special thing to allow?
This one is a little bit hardier for diving, and it's got bigger print, and it can also glow if I need to, if it's a little bit dark. So that's why I prefer this one. But yeah, larger print is better, especially in the Gulf waters. They can be so cloudy.
Yeah, perfect. So again, kind of going with our field work, what is your best worst field story?
I debated on sharing this, but I would say probably the worst off I've been in the field was when I got food poisoning in Costa Rica in a very remote village. It was not fun. I was a crew chief, so I couldn't exactly sit it out, you know. I mean, I'm sure I could have, but we had to do a foot survey in the jungle where there are venomous vipers that tend to drop from the treetops to surprise their prey. And it was not fun to kind of sneak away from the group to discreetly use the facilities and worry about snakes like dropping on me from above. So yeah, I was able to laugh about it that day, but it was pretty tough. And we had a diving portion that day as well, which again, on a boat, no facilities. So it was rough.
Crazy to think of just our breed of worker who will just be like, nope, we have a research dates, we gotta go.
Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do, and if you can laugh about it, it's not as painful. So
kind of getting a little bit loftier, even a little bit theoretical. How do you think that archaeology can save the world?
I would say that archaeology inspires people. So what I mean is, think about the last time you walked around a heritage site or in the Smithsonian and just how you felt. So for example, the first time I went to Petra, I was moved to tears, and I just couldn't believe the sheer effort that went into creating that site. It was inspiring, it was beautiful, and it kind of tells us that we can accomplish great things. So while archaeology is about looking back, it also makes us look forward as we consider what we are actually capable of. So that's what I would say.
I love it. I absolutely do.
I'm constantly trying to chase that feeling, you know, that wonderment and excitement. So
our last, which was a fun bonus question, is during these times, what is keeping you sane?
Tallahassee, where our office is based, it has a lot of green spaces and plenty of wooded trails. They're technically mountain biking trails, but I've been running the wooded trails. They're pretty empty and it's quiet, and just being in that green space is really de-stressing. So yeah, I love it. That's what I do.
Oh, no, trying to get outside as much as possible. Or for me,
yes.
I try to bring the outside inside.
There you go.
Well, that's the last of our questions for the day. So I'd like to say thank you for coming on to TN Trowels, and cheers.
Thank you so much for the invite. I really enjoyed it.